So just behind me here is SFO, San Francisco International Airport. I've been standing here for like 10, 15 minutes, just watching the planes taxi, take off, and land. It's been pretty cool, but the reason I'm in San Francisco is because today, December 7th, 2022, is Skydio Dock Day, and I actually already made a full video on the dock itself, as well as all the other applications that Skydio's made that integrate with the dock to make it super powerful. Now, it might be easy to look at something like Skydio's dock and think, oh, that's just nothing more than a box that holds the drone, keeps it safe from the weather, charges it, and then spits it out whenever you want to fly. But there is so much more that goes into it, and that went into the development of the dock to make sure that it was the smartest possible solution for Skydio's drones to fly fully autonomously. And again, as I mentioned, there's all these different applications that Skydio made that integrate with the dock to make it even more powerful. So I figured, what better way to learn more about the dock and what went into developing it than hearing from Adam Bry himself, who is the CEO of Skydio. But first, we've got to head to downtown San Francisco to fly the drone. All right, Adam.
Awesome.
Thanks for sitting down with me.
Yeah, I'm super excited to have the opportunity.
Of course. So the dock just released. We've got both of them here, right? We've got the actual dock and the Dock Lite. The Dock Lite surprised me because I didn't know that you guys were going to develop something this small and this affordable.
Yeah. Well, look, we're obviously super excited about both products and excited about the whole kind of software drone solution that they fit into.
Yeah.
The Dock Lite was an interesting one for us. You know, when we started thinking about docks a few years ago, there were early inklings of indoor applications, indoor use cases, and the more time that we spent with those customers, the more value we saw there, and the more that we realized there was an opportunity to build something that was really unique, small, light, affordable, very easy to deploy, very easy to move around if you need to. So it's obviously not for every environment. Like, you're not going to want to put that thing out in a dusty hailstorm or something, but for secure indoor environments, it's a really elegant solution, and it's also super versatile. So you know, you can see it's sitting on a tripod, but it's just got the standard 1/4-20 screw on the bottom, so you can really like mount it to anything. Like you can, you know, put a beam off a wall, put it on a tripod on the ground, you know, wherever you think it makes sense to squeeze it.
I heard this was designed by accident.
Well, I will say sometimes you kind of get pulled into a product. So the history on this thing, like we originally developed the Dock Lites for just our own internal testing and validation, because it's a super useful thing to be able to set them up indoors and have the drone run a bunch of repeatable flights. And customers started seeing them and saying like, well, that looks useful. You know, I'd love to have that in my site. I'm like, all right. And you know, there's only so many times you can hear that before you like,
you have to, right?
Before you actually have to follow through and
twist your
build
arm.
it. So yeah, that one had a lot of customer pull that we weren't necessarily expecting.
Yeah. So now let's take a step back because yesterday, you know, with Dock Day being today, when we kind of got an early look yesterday, heard a little bit about the growth of the company, like Skydio in general. You guys went from just having the R1 to now a full line of drones, from the Skydio 2 to the 2 Plus to the S2 or the
X2.
Yeah, the X2, right?
Yep.
You now have the Dock Lite, so you have like this full suite. So how has that growth been from being the company that has one drone, 4 or 5 years ago, to now having this full plethora of offerings?
Even just 3 years ago. So we launched Skydio 2 3 years ago. It was the end of 2019. And it has been a wild and exciting ride since then, really. I mean, it's kind of a different phase of the company. You know, we're working on really hard technology. Drones in general, I think, are just more complex to to bring to life than most people realize. Even if you're not trying to make the thing autonomous, there's just so many different technology elements that get integrated to make these things work. And then if you want the thing to really be autonomous in a trustworthy way, that's a different level of complexity. So, there's a ton of R&D that went into R1. We learned a lot from R1, iterated, and with Skydio 2 in 2019 got to something that was really scalable. There was a ton of consumer demand, and there was an immediate need to scale into that. But we also had seen the opportunity for all these other enterprise and public sector applications, which became a major focus for us beginning of 2020 with hardware and software offerings. So it's been super exciting. And look, we love the products and the tech. The most exciting thing for us is what customers are doing with stuff in the wild. And we've now, in the consumer space, we've got people making just on a daily basis like incredible content with Skydio 2 that you really wouldn't be able to film any other way. All the stuff that we sort of dreamed of 6-7 years ago, like hiking, biking, skiing, adventuring, all kinds of wacky creative stuff. And then in the enterprise space, we're up to over 1,000 organizations now using Skydio drones for all kinds of things. And we see examples of it in what we showed today, but energy utilities, construction companies, departments of transportation, public safety agencies, and a huge presence now in the defense world, which I think is something that's really coming. National defense in general, national security, I think is rising in everybody's attention, and we're really proud and excited to have the U.S. Army, the Marines,
that's great,
as major customers. We have hundreds of drones in Ukraine now, so it's a very different place from where we were as a company 3 years ago, and it's been an exciting ride to get here.
Yeah, and I'm guessing that a dock in that case would be helpful for them as well in military and Army applications.
Yeah, I would say that it's hard to find, at least in the enterprise and public sector world, it's hard to find a customer where a dock isn't extremely valuable and transformative. Basically, you can go customer by customer, and it's true in the defense world. Being able to mount these things for security perimeter patrols, being able to mount them to moving vehicles, there's huge opportunity there. We didn't make any announcements there today, but it's obviously something that we're thinking about and working on with the customers that we already have there using our X2s as the soldier carried system.
That's great. Now, in regards to the dock itself, it looks like this one's a little bit of an older model because you don't have the lights up top here, right?
Yeah.
So
this was the show and tell prototype.
Yeah, but still, this is great. What led you to thinking that a dock is like the future, right? Like, why did you think that this was a good offering for your drones to use? I think from speaking with you, it sounds like it's always been something that's been in the mind of you guys, right?
It really is. So when we were thinking about starting the company in 2013, this was me and Abe and Matt. We were spending a lot of time. When you're thinking about starting a company in a new category like this, you're sort of like trying to peer off into the future, and it's foggy. You can only see so far, but we really believed that autonomy was going to be important. And then if you think about the logical conclusion of autonomy, you don't want to need to have a person there on the ground to fly and operate the thing. So even back in 2013, when we were thinking about this stuff, it really seemed like eventually having these systems live in an internet-connected charging base station was a likely destination point. So it's something that we've been thinking about for a really long time. I think, as with many things in the drone industry, it's easy to imagine it. It's hard to make it a reality, and it's a question of like market timing and product and technology readiness. And it feels like, look, I think the dock category is still absolutely in its infancy, but I think it feels like it's the right time for these things to start actually happening and getting deployed in more and more scale. The core value in enterprise applications has been proven out. Energy utilities, public safety agencies, they know what to do with drones. They know there's real ROI there, and now the dock enables them in many use cases to get that ROI in a even more effective way.
Yeah, so on the side, doing YouTube and stuff like that, I've also got a business where I offer my services.
You do work outside of YouTube?
Yeah, well, look, YouTube might not be work, okay? It might not be work. This is fun. Yeah. So I go and I actually offer my services to construction companies, right? Doing photos and videos of their job. Yeah. And unfortunately, this is something that might put me out of business, right? But I look at that as a really good thing because I'm a huge advocate for drones. And in speaking with my dad, who's a superintendent at a construction company,
talking to him, what they do right now, you're going to laugh at this because I was telling some of the other people on your team, is they walk around with 360 cameras on their helmets, their hard hats.
It's a little goofy.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So in talking to him, I said, hey, look, there's this thing, and basically you put it inside of your warehouse, because his company builds Amazon warehouses, Microsoft data centers, everything, right? These big, massive structures. I said, what if there was a drone where you could go on your computer and you just like push a button and just gives you all this data? He's like, that sounds great. I'd love that.
Yeah.
So
well, you don't even have to push a button. I mean, you push the button once. You say like, I just want it to fly once a day and get the data, and then the data is just showing up to you, and eventually it's showing up to you with automated insights.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's great not only for those people that are like on site there, but it's the people that make up the company that might be in another state or might be in another city, or your client that might be across the country or across the world.
Yeah.
It's huge.
It's absolutely huge. So there's different ways you can think about this. I sometimes like to think sort of like theoretical standpoint, what are we delivering here? I mean, the basic capability is essentially being able to simulate having a camera wherever you want it, whenever you need it, without needing to have a person there to control it.
Yeah.
So we showed this in the event today, but we developed what we call Skydio visual positioning system, which maps the environment the first time it flies it. It then remembers that map and can relocalize against it with quite a bit of precision. So basically what that means is I want to take a picture from exactly this angle, and I want that image captured once every 30 minutes or once an hour or once a day, once a week, whatever it is. And the drone will do that. And you can do that in thousands of locations across the environment. It's really a super powerful capability. And the construction example, I agree with. I think in the future, every construction site essentially is going to have a dock drone that lives on it, captures all the data. You've got a full digital record of everything that happened.
Yeah.
The general contractor can rely on that. The property owner can rely on that. And it removes all the ambiguity and uncertainty from the process. There's one, if I may, one last point here, which I think is important, something that I think about. The goal of this stuff is not to put folks like you who are going out, but no, I think it's an important point. Who are going out doing these jobs manually. I really think about this along the lines of the computer, the progress we've seen in computing over the last 40, 50 years. As the technology becomes more automated and easier to use, it becomes accessible to way more people. But the people who are really expert in the technology also get more and more power and can create more and more value as it matures. So the people who are experts in computers now have enormous leverage through software development and AWS. But computers are also accessible to people who don't know anything about how they work. And I think it's going to be the same story with drones. For people who are really expert in the technology and go deep, you can now, rather than flying one drone, you can fly 5 or 10 or 50 or 100 at once.
Yeah.
And so it just puts people in an even more leveraged position, both within organizations and folks like you who are out there doing these jobs. But maybe it means you have to spend more time on YouTube.
Well, look, that would be nice because I love doing the YouTube videos, but I also think about that as well. I mean, being able to remotely control drones from basically my desk, right? Not having to actually leave, and being able to provide services to clients by taking one of these docks, leaving it on their site and saying, hey, don't worry, I'll manage that for you. So it really is an exciting future. Speaking of that, right, I mean, you don't just have the dock, you've got a lot of software integrations that go along with the dock, right? So when we were kind of looking at the demos, you had the 3D mapping, you had the remote ops, right? Which remote ops, it felt like a video game. Right? So I'm jumping on the computer and I'm flying the drone in a warehouse that's 20 miles away. And it's so cool because it's like when the drone started to lose battery, it got down to 20%, it started flying back to the dock. And it's one of those things I was like, I'll just, walk away from the computer because I know that it's going to land safely. So, that whole thing is really important, I think, to make the dock really powerful. So can you tell us a little bit more about remote ops?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, first of all, it's conceptually, I think, a really awesome thing. It's you can go to this website to search the internet, you can go to this website to check the news, and you can go to this website to fly a drone anywhere in the world. It's that's the power of the technology world that we live in. And one of the ways that we think about this stuff is there's a lot of these sort of fundamental building blocks that make these things work. So the starting point, the really fundamental building block for us, is the drone and the core autonomy system. So the drone that can sense its environment. There's a big investment in real-time 3D mapping that's running on board the drone for navigation and collision avoidance. But you're starting to see us expand that in more and more ways. So 3D scan, a product to automatically inspect or document any structure. So that exists without dock. It's a product we launched last year. So that's building on that mapping capability. It's building a whole product around it. All of that is now coming into dock. So soon you'll be able to run 3D scans from dock, and then the Skydio visual positioning system is also building on a lot of that same stuff. Those 3D maps then become assets that the user can use to plan missions, aggregate their data. So all these things fit together in really powerful ways. And the ability to fly manually, but with really good collision avoidance, like that's a very useful thing if you're out there flying a drone manually. What we've seen with customers is it enables them to think more about the task, especially if you're flying in a challenging environment, rather than having to worry about the drone crashing. But it's an essential capability for teleoperation, right? If you're flying in a warehouse over the internet, you can't see what's around the drone, and so there's no way you're going to do that safely without that collision avoidance in manual flight. So a lot of these building blocks just become more and more powerful over time as we refine them and as we build our way up the stack.
Yeah, and I mean, you think about a warehouse, it's a really complex environment. So being able to have that collision avoidance using your 6 cameras on these drones is great because, if there's, say, a ladder that falls and is in the way, it's able to maneuver and make its way around that even though it wasn't there before. So, I mean, that's a huge aspect of it.
Absolutely. That's in working with customers in the construction space, especially, that's something we see all the time, right?
Yeah, it's always changing.
Yeah, the definition of a construction site is that it's changing.
Yes.
And so, the pre-map is useful, but you need to have that real-time navigation capability.
Now, this is obviously the big dock is for the outside, the little dock, the light is for the inside, right? So when you're doing the inside flights, in terms of regulation, right, with the FAA, like there's really no waivers that you need. You're able to fly it autonomously indoors, and that's why you have that big warehouse, because you can fly them all day long without any issue. Something that I find really interesting is you're helping customers with the process of getting the waivers to use the dock outside for these, beyond a visual line of sight flights, things of that nature. So can you touch on that a little bit? Because again, I think that this technology is here and able to be used, but I think some people might think in the back of their mind that it's completely impossible when you've obviously proven it's not.
Yeah, so look, I said this during our session, but I'm a eternal optimist when it comes to regulation. I think there's a lot of drone companies out there that like to, say, oh, we could be doing all this amazing stuff. The regulator won't let us. My view is over the long term, the trend line is super positive. 10 years ago, people were concerned there wasn't going to be any commercial operation at all. The FAA was just going to shut the whole thing down. That's not what happened. Like Part 107 opened up, commercial markets have proliferated, and it's unrealistic to expect that the regulation is going to be on the leading edge of the technology. The regulations today are basically written from the standpoint that you need to have an expert pilot there flying the thing, which, given the general state of play in drones, is not unreasonable. But we're starting to see regulators recognize that autonomous operations are a real thing. And what we've seen is, like, when you've got a product that works and you've got a customer that's getting value out of it, especially when you've got a customer that has a safety case where, like, by flying the drone, they're preventing somebody from having to climb a tower or roll a truck or put themselves in a harmful situation, people respond to that because it just makes a lot of sense to use the drone to do it in a better, safer way. And we decided a couple years ago that regulation really needed to become a first-class competency of the company if we were going to help our customers succeed. So we've invested a lot there. Jen Player, who leads our regulatory team, is phenomenal. She's really one of the foremost experts in this. She was working with our customers even before she worked for us, and now she and her team are partnering very closely with people to basically figure out what's the best way to do what you want to do in a safe way that we can get done from an approved regulatory standpoint. So we've got a bunch of waivers that we've announced to date. We've got many more coming.
Yeah.
And that's something unique that we can bring to the table when partnering with customers to deploy these things and make them scale.
Yeah, that's obviously really important. So peeling back the shade or the cover a little bit, what was probably one of the most, I guess, I would say the hardest thing about developing this dock? What was one of the biggest issues that you ran into? Because I think that a lot of people look at this and they say, oh, it's a box that spits out the drone, and the drone can be charged, and it's housed in there, it's protected from the elements, and then it flies off. But there's so much more that's going on, right? I mean, this design is so intricate to the point where when you have the X2 in there, it's folding up the propellers, it's putting the antennas down, right?
Yeah.
So it's doing so much. And of course, it's landing and launching by itself. So back in 2019, when you originally unveiled the dock, it was a little metal box, and now you have something that I say looks so Skydio, like it matches the design of your drone. So what was one of the biggest challenges you guys faced?
So I'll say a couple things here. I think that there's, all these systems are complex hardware, electrical, software systems that need to work together. So there's a ton of work that goes into every piece of this: the wireless, the mechanicals, all the mechanisms that need to open and close. something that I think is maybe slightly counterintuitive, but is super important, is the thermals. So being able, when you fly any lithium-ion or lithium polymer battery, it heats up and it can't charge again until it reaches a cool enough temperature. And being able to do that, especially on a hot day, if you got this thing out in the sun, it's getting baked, being able to do that quickly and efficiently is a really, really challenging problem. And so on our X2 docks for outdoor use, we have an amazing thermoelectric cooling solution that basically pumps cold air over the bottom of the battery in a really efficient way to cool the thing. And the design of that system, we've done cooling solutions that run on board the drone, but the design of that system was kind of a fundamentally new thing for us and something that we're pretty proud of. But the other thing I'll say here is that the real challenge with these things is the system level. It's getting the dock and the drone and the cloud and all this stuff to work in an end-to-end reliable way. So I think you got to see Dock Warehouse.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's in our view, there's no way to shortcut this. You need to be doing thousands upon thousands upon thousands of flights and measuring empirically how the system is performing and seeing what goes wrong and then addressing it. So that's like the big meta level investment, is the infrastructure for ourselves internally initially just run thousands of flights per day. So we're doing a couple thousand flights per day. We're up to over 100,000 flights total, and we're kind of increasing exponentially there. And we found untold long tail bugs there of little edge cases that can go wrong every once in a while. And that's how we're grinding down the reliability, because the key metric at the end of the day is like, the percent uptime and the percent of the time that the thing just does exactly what you expect it to do. And that's an interaction of hardware, software, systems, everything.
Yeah, so for the people that might be watching that don't know what, the Dock Warehouse is, it's basically a warehouse that has, probably 15 or 20 different stations.
I mean, it varies and it's increasing, but yeah.
And these drones are just flying nonstop all day, all night. And looking at some of the analytics that were shared are really impressive. I mean, you're as close to 100% as can be in terms of...
It's all about nines of reliability.
Yes. Yeah. So the testing that they do with these is really impressive, just because if you're setting it up somewhere that is in a remote location, you don't want to have to continue to be like, I have to go check on it, right? You want to make sure that it's doing its thing, and really to forget about it is probably the best use case, and you're as close to being able to forget about it as you probably can be.
Yeah, that's a sign of success. And look, I should be clear here, like these systems are not perfect. Like the number's not 100%. It's like 99 or 99.9, and the only way to bump those things up is to get the experience, and we're driving as much of that as we can. We're also obviously deploying these things on customer sites, and my view is that the more reliable they get, the more use cases open up. Like if you want to put this in a remote facility in Alaska that a person goes to once a year, like that's a very high, that's like one of the harshest environments, the highest bars for reliability, and that's not where we're doing our first deployments because we're not there yet.
Totally.
These things will continue to improve over time, and as they do, more and more applications will open up.
Now, going back to we were talking about some of the issues, or maybe not the issues, but like some of the hardships you faced in developing this. I know you said that it was also a big software feat too, right? There's a lot of software that goes into making sure that this works. So is there anything on the software end that kind of stands out to you as being, a little bit more difficult than other things you had to face?
Well, the thing that I would... Oops.
Hey, the lights went out. We got motion sensor lights in here.
All right, are you on?
I'll stand up and I'll move around.
Fixed exposure? Or?
Yeah, it's fixed exposure. All right, so we'll just restart that from the top.
Yeah.
So going back to kind of what we were talking about in regards to the hardships faced in developing the dock from a hardware standpoint.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned that on the software side there were some not, I would say some things that you need to tackle that were a little bit more difficult than others, right? So was there anything that stands out to you in that regard?
Well, first of all, I'd say adventures, not hardships.
Adventures, Look, it's always an adventure.
Yeah, building these things it really is super fun. I mean, I think that the challenges involved in making these systems really work is, at least for me, and I think a lot of folks here, that's part of the joy of it. The thing that I would call out on the software side is the visual positioning system. I mean, I mentioned this before, but it's really a foundational piece of technology. All of our drones to date, essentially, when they take off, it's like a newborn waking up or something, right? It doesn't remember the environment that's flown in, and that's you need that capability because you can't assume that the prior map's going to be perfect, and if somebody's out there on their skateboard filming themselves, like, you're not going to have seen that place before. You need to be able to map it in real time and respond to it. But the ability to remember the map in a dock scenario where you're operating in the same environment over time is really, really powerful. And this is building on stuff that we've been working on for a while, but the team has really done phenomenal work to get that to a point where it's productized, where like you can set this thing up in a new environment, it can map it, and then it can repeatably run missions off of that. And so that's something that is already useful because it enables you to like go back and get exactly the same shot over and over again, but it's going to become more and more useful over time. And I think you'll see us build more and more things around that.
Yeah, so speaking of that, and kind of what I want to wrap up with here is like, what's next for the dock? So I know that you mentioned like mobile operations, being able to mount it to a truck or something like that, right? But is there anything else that you kind of see the dock being able to do in the future that you're working towards? Like, do you have any other goals in terms of the dock?
There's a ton of stuff.
I'm sure there is, but
Yeah,
like, what do you find is maybe the most immediate? Like, what is like your next steps now that this is finally going to be put out there in the wild? You've been working with partners before to kind of get a sense of what people need and stuff like that, but is there anything that you're kind of striving towards for the dock to do?
So I'm gonna give an answer that you might find unsatisfying,
Sure,
but I think that there's a lot of exciting technology stuff coming down the pipeline.
Yeah.
I think that the next most important thing, and we're in the middle of this with a lot of customers, we've been through it with some, is the operational grind to really stand these things up in an operational context. And, it's kind of unsexy, it's kind of unglamorous, but getting the data that comes off these in a format that fits into the business systems of the customer, and what do they need to do with it, and what are the right insights to be extracted. Getting that, we've done the dock system, so drone flies itself, captures the data, uploads it to the cloud, but that's just a part of a larger system, right? It's driving business change for the way people run their businesses. And so that kind of operational grind is in some ways unglamorous, but I think it's super fun and super satisfying if you get into it in the right way. And it's something that we take really seriously as a company. Like, you heard from, I don't know if you met Alden Jones, who leads customer success for us. He and his team are great. And my weekly leadership meeting starts with his update on like what's happening in the wild with customers, what's working, what's not, what are the issues. We're paying special attention to the dock stuff because it's such an important company priority. And it's no one big magic thing. It's a lot of little things, and it varies customer by customer, industry by industry. And it can be gnarly, but it's super fun to come out the other end and see the systems really working.
Yeah, I think it's something that's so new that it's just, it's going to be something that continues to grow. It's also cool just kind of looking at them and taking a second to kind of understand like the little nuances. Like, I like how with the arm here, right, like part of the arm is actually also enclosing the dock, right? I mean, there's these small little design details that really do stand out about the dock. And I think that overall you've kind of developed this system, first party from the drone to the software to the dock, that is going to make it operate so much better than maybe some other offerings out there.
Yeah, I'd say a couple things. I mean, I think that the hardware software integration is really key to making these systems work. But having, there's some companies that are just making dock drones, and maybe there's some value in sort of like the narrower focus there. But the experience that we've built up over the last 8 years, building tens of thousands of drones, having customers use them in all kinds of environments, is invaluable for us in making the system as reliable and performant as it can be. So all these pieces are coming together in more and more exciting ways.
Awesome. Well, I cannot wait to see it used in the future. Thank you for sitting down with me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Billy. I should say it's been really cool watching what you've done personally and with your channel over the last couple of years.
Cool,
I think
thank you.
Yeah, it's awesome having somebody out there for the drone industry who's like...
Yeah. And look, you guys have kind of helped bring these products that nobody probably thought could exist, to light. Because really, when I first started my channel, it was nothing but just new drones coming out that you just fly and fly and fly. But this is like a brand new experience, and it's cool to kind of see how not only on the consumer side, you can get this thing and have it follow you, but how that same drone and that same technology can be so useful in the commercial drone space. It's really awesome.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks for coming out for this.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.